So last time around, even though we were successful in taking down the physical manifestations of our darker halves, there was a couple things I felt I could do a little bit better. So I went back and redid a couple things, such as making sure to hit the 2 hour and 22 minute mark, because while the secret item you get at that particular mark in time is not that great, it's still a bit worth getting because it is our first piece of physical armor. Yeah, Ogden's shirt here is not really a stat powerhouse, but the game really isn't forthcoming with giving you physical armor, so any piece you can get, you need to make sure and get it. And the shirt, I'm going to go ahead and put on James here, not so much for the piety increase, but for the slight luck increase. And the other thing I made sure to work on a little bit more, and that I haven't really covered yet, is weapons and magic levels. Yeah, over the course of the game, we're not really going to get much better weaponry, and we're never going to get, a Fire 2 spell or an improved heal spell. Instead, if we want to make our spells more useful or our weapons more useful, well, they will just level up from general usage. Pretty much every time you swing with a weapon or cast a spell, you'll get roughly 40 experience points, and whenever you reach 1,000 experience points, you will go to the next level. Yeah, I made sure to grind up Edward's fisticuffs abilities just because, your fists never break. Not really great weapons. But yeah, we will see shortly just what those improvements will do. For now, though, I think it's time we go ahead and press forward onto adventure.
Did you see all those bodies? Be quite a party if they were alive.
They've probably been abandoned for hundreds of years. Must be some fascinating old stories.
I saw some pretty fresh ones, too. One who was shot, one who'd been cracked in the head with an axe, and some with no visible signs of injury. They must have been poisoned.
I bet the new ones were fortune seekers like us. That old couple must
You
have
mean to
got...
tell me they killed all those people? Rubbish!
All those deaths are rubbish?
They're all liars and thieves anyway. This is still a monastery. This is still God's house, prison or no. Why all those liars and heathens are killed is none of my concern.
How could you possibly say a thing like that? That doesn't sound very priestly.
I am not a priest. I am a bishop.
I don't give a rat's ass what you are. Look, I'm not saying that all of those people were saints, okay? But that doesn't mean that they should be put to death.
You saw that old couple. They're so well-mannered, kind. You think they're killers?
Good manners?
Yes.
Think about it! Why would they leave the place such a mess?
I don't know.
You think they'd at least bury the body?
Possibly.
Anyway, I have this strange feeling we're not alone with all these bodies and ghosts. You'd better keep your mouths shut. If you want to live.
And while James and Edward continue to have their heated arguments, it's up to Koudelka here to keep a cool head and hopefully keep our party on course. Speaking of which, if we take a quick look at our map here, you will see that we are slowly running out of areas to explore in the general vicinity. And, well, before we do start backtracking, I guess we might as well go ahead and explore that nearby room, even though it does look like a dead end.
Koudelka, did you find anything?
No, nothing, but...
Who's that?
So a bit of a mixed blessing after that tumble, in that we do find ourselves in a brand new area. It's just it appears to be another corpse-filled dungeon, and what's worse, it does appear to be another dead end. Still, it's not all bad. There are a couple of hidden items you can find in here, such as some very well-received pistol rounds. And if you explore the same little nook here, you'll also find an antidote, which will cure only poison, which is not that great. But outside of that, we do see what appears to be a bit of a structurally unsound wall that we can't really do much with. In fact, the only real thing of interest that catches Koudelka's eye in here is this very large pile of corpses. But bear in mind, we are not alone down here with the cadavers, as we have a whole new cadre of ghastly enemies to take care of, such as this topless zombie. While it does cut a pretty horrifying figure, it may seem initially like this thing is not really something to take that seriously. I mean, it doesn't really have much in the way of elemental weaknesses, so any spell will pretty much do a reasonable amount of damage. It does have a pretty high vitality pool though, so doing physical attacks against it will not really do that much to it. It's just you won't really get the full idea of the danger this enemy poses till it does decide to pull off its attack. And if you're wondering just how a topless zombie will attack, why, it explodes out in some horrifying viscera. And that viscera, as you can tell, does a very, very large amount of magic damage. Took almost Edward down to half health with just a single blow. And it also has a ranged intestinal attack as well, which does pretty much the same. And while this is the first time we are seeing this enemy, it does have a rare opportunity to pop up earlier on in the game. And when it does, it can almost one-shot you if you don't have a high enough piety rating. So not only is it a very gross customer, but it is also a very, very dangerous customer. But outside of the corpses here, we can probably explore the bars again.
Darn!
How does it look? You think we can get out?
I don't think so. You'd need the strength of a bear to break those bars with your hands.
What do you mean we can't get out? How hard can it be?
Why don't you ask these guys?
Damn it! Did you see that? Someone's in here.
Will you shut up and get us out of here? How hard can it be for thieves like you to get us out of a place like this?
Try saying that in the East End, holy man. Your severed head would hit the ground before you even finished the thought.
This is worthless. I can't believe I'm wasting my time on you. I'm on a mission from God.
What a waste. Such a terrible waste. My name's Charlotte. Not that it means anything. Not that you have a prayer. I'm talking to 3 dead people. Nobody's gonna save you. Nobody.
So you died here as well?
Yes, I died here too, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They locked me up in here right after I was born. They beheaded me the day I turned 9. Happy birthday. I've been trapped here ever since, and no one even knows who I am.
My poor little angel.
Poor little angel, me? Save your pity for yourself. You'll be dead within 3 days.
Not true. I don't know what your circumstances are, but I know that your mother loved you very, very much.
My mother? I don't know her face, her name, where she came from. Nothing. You're telling me that means nothing? From the day I was born, the day I died, no one ever loved me. And I never wanted to be loved. Just die! All of you! Just die!
And the before we can press Charlotte for any more information, she is driven away by our first mini-boss of the area, the ghostly jailer. Yeah, this floating aristocrat armed with a rapier is something I'd barely hazard to even call a boss, and in fact he ends up becoming just a normal enemy after this encounter. In fact, all he really has going for him in comparison to his normal counterpart is a bit more vitality. He doesn't really have any other gimmicks to speak of. He can, I think, do a ranged magic attack. He can attack with a rapier, and I think very occasionally he will buff himself. It's just that we do kind of outnumber him, and even though he doesn't really have any elemental strengths or weaknesses, pretty much any spell that Koudelka does cast will do a pretty large chunk of damage. In fact, at this point, I'm going to start using something other than Flare just to make sure we start leveling up her other elemental proficiencies. And also going to start using James in his support role here just because well, his gun's not really going to do that much damage against this enemy, and you know, that extra strength to Edward is probably going to be more beneficial. So, we can't really attack with James here because we forgot to reload, but it's not really going to be that necessary. Still, though, he should almost be dead. See if we can't unnecessarily do a little bit of overkill here and level up our water spell. Also, we saw the benefit there of leveling up James with his gun. He did manage to fire off 2 shots at once, so almost double the damage, which is not that impressive. Still, we did manage to overcome our first little mini-boss here. And for our struggles, we also did level up. And this time, I am still going to be leveling up Koudelka and James's magic stats, but I feel like I have been kind of neglecting their vitality stat. And, well, we are going to want to make sure and keep that up, because there are going to be some opportunities or some situations where they are going to be taking some physical damage, even in the back rows. Edward, though, still just going to move up his physical stats. No real reason to bump up his magic stats ever. And outside of some very easy experience and leveling, our other reward for that fight is a brand new ranged weapon. Along with continued access to the rest of the dungeon. Before we continue on into that area, though, we might as well go ahead and take a quick look at that brand new gun. We won't really be getting that many guns over the course of the game, and this one is not tremendously different from the pistol. Doesn't really have much more damage. It actually lowers our agility. The real main difference, though, is the fact that its ammo capacity is almost double, so you only have to reload half as much. It's just, it does have unique ammo, so outside the 12 shots it has right now, we don't really have any more. So we're just going to keep James with the pistol and go ahead and continue our exploration of this brand new and much more ghastly dungeon. In fact, almost immediately it already shows just what waits in store for us. You see the battered and tortured bodies of many a woman down here. Along with the bodies, we also find a brand new weapon here. And while you might think this could be a very nice weapon for, I don't know, Edward, since it seems to be a very large bludgeoning weapon, in actuality, it is a caster item. Seems to be a pretty nice boon to not only all of the magic stats, but also vitality, with its one main drawback being that it lowers Koudelka's agility by quite a bit, which can be pretty detrimental. Especially considering enemies like this upside-down zombie. You might notice that he is carrying a gun, and that makes him especially dangerous because he can completely circumvent our meaty tank and almost manage to kill Koudelka in one shot. This upside-down zombie is another enemy that you can sometimes rarely run into early on in the game. And something else to keep in mind is that Koudelka's piety is actually pretty high at this point, and as I mentioned, that can be a bit of a double-edged sword. It's something I only remembered in retrospect here. I was a bit worried that I wouldn't be able to get off the next spell before our upside-down zombie decided to fire again. Thankfully, though, managed to get off that flare just in the nick of time. And that does kind of bring up something that I probably haven't mentioned before, and that is usually whenever you equip something that does increase your vitality, it does not heal you up to the vitality that you expanded up to. So even though she did get an extra 200 vitality from equipping the mace, you had to heal her up to that before she really got the benefit. In addition to that mace, we also find a brand new fisticuff-based weapon here. And that works out pretty well, because since we have been working up Edward's bare-handed ability, these fire knuckles, while a little bit weaker strength-wise and dexterity-wise, have quite a bit of a boon to his agility, so he will be attacking quite a bit more. Yeah, this area of the dungeon is a lot darker setting-wise than the previous areas. In fact, this locked door here, well, we can find the key nearby. It just happens to be placed right in between these mummified children. Problem is that it does appear to be stuck in between them. And it does give us the option to pull out the key, it's just, you want to make sure not to. And I'll show why in a bonus video, just, you know, bear in mind not to grab that key just yet. Instead, we just want to go ahead and press on further into this rather bizarrely hellish landscape. I mean, we did get some indication from the guard's diary that this place was pretty much hell on earth. It's just, well, you don't really get an idea of it till you're right in the thick of it. And the enemy selection just kind of adds on to that even more. This little twitching enemy here, thankfully, is not a child. Instead, I think the game calls it a Chacon, and I guess the Japanese translation is something of a sea mollusk. It's not really that dangerous by itself. It has pretty low vitality. Its only real claim to fame is that it will shoot you with its eye laser given the chance, and that can do quite a bit of damage. Thankfully, though, I think from that last fight we had, we were pretty close to a level, and we will be getting levels pretty hot and heavy down in this area. I don't think we were truly under-leveled from the previous area we had left. It's just, yeah, I think they want to make sure you are good and ready for the struggles ahead. Speaking of struggles, it's a bit of a struggle to really imagine just all the terrors that went down in this place. I mean, it's nice to get these rifle rounds, but in addition to that, we can see a very large pool of acid, along with a mechanism off to the side here, which if we explore a little bit closer, is, I guess, a means for us to get even more acid. Though at this moment, we don't really have a real means to carry around acid. Though I can only imagine what horrible tortures they were used for in the previous years. And this roly-poly manifestation of sheer horror is, believe it or not, an amalgamation of, I think, dead, unbaptized babies that got stuck in limbo, and yeah, it amazingly has quite a bit in the way of vitality, and given the chance, it can do a pretty horrifying spell. Is that great sound work and does a tremendous amount of damage to at least Edward here. It also causes paralysis on at least 2 out of the 3 members of our party. Good thing is, as you might have noticed a couple times when Edward has attacked, he has comboed into a flurry of punches and kicks, which is all that working up of his fisticuff leveling. And it's nice to have something to fall back on, considering that you do end up having a finite amount of normal weapons, and it is nice to be able to use your fist when you need to. Now, before you continue on forward, you want to make sure and go down this little hidden alcove here, because it does allow you access to your first save point of the area. Though, as with all the other save points, you are going to have to fight a boss first. And this floating monstrosity here, known as the Madfly, is a very, very unexpectedly large hurdle. He has a very, very large pool of vitality. He has one particular elemental weakness you do want to make sure and take advantage of. And he has one in particular attack that is extremely, extremely unexpectedly damaging. In fact, that's why I made sure to have Edward switch away from his knuckles, which might have been useful here to a mace-based weapon, just so he will have some additional health. Also, for this particular fight, you want to make sure and have James here stick to just, buffing and healing, because I don't think his gun is going to be of very much use against this horror. Now, if you're wondering just how this Madfly does choose to attack, it's got both very damaging magic and physical attacks. It has, I think, one flame-based attack that does have the chance to silence you, which is something we haven't really seen before, which causes you to be unable to cast magic. And, given the chance, he could actually end up silencing both of your casters, which is an incredibly dire situation you never want to be in. In addition to that, he also has another ranged melee attack, which I think might poison you, but it doesn't seem to have any other really noticeable effects to it other than just doing probably a good 200 damage to anyone with low piety. Really, his main claim to fame is his physical attacks, which we will be seeing shortly. It's just he does have 2 variants that he can do of his physical attack. Thankfully, we won't be seeing the more damaging version of it because, after doing quite a few test runs of this particular boss fight, I found that it ended up doing, I'd say, about 600 total damage. And that was while I was still trying to use the knuckles to try to be cool and impressive with Edward's combo abilities. It's just, it didn't work out. You really, really need that vitality. Because something else I haven't really covered before, and hopefully won't need to show off in boss fights, is that we have seen Edward die before. It's just that, well, there can be a state where you won't be able to resurrect a downed enemy or downed friendly in a boss fight, and that's if the boss or enemy manages to get around and outflank the person you're trying to revive. Yeah, the game is really stringent about not being able to do back attacks or flanking attacks. And in fact, I got into a few situations off camera where Edward had died and the boss immediately moseyed itself around Edward, and yeah, I was pretty much screwed at that point. Couldn't resurrect Edward and just had to start the fight over. Because, yeah, it'll do 600 physical damage to Edward. It'll do probably double that to either one of our casters in the back here. The good thing is, though, it decided not to use its combo attack, instead just hit me with its normal melee, which also does have the chance to poison. And if you're wondering about the enemy's elemental weakness here, it is a flying enemy, so it is going to be weak to earth-based spells, which is a bit unusual for RPGs. Usually in RPGs, whenever you have a bird or flying type enemy, and you try to cast something like Quake on it, it just completely ignores the attack because obviously it's not on the ground. In this game, though, it is highly, highly damaging to the enemy. Especially after we went ahead and buffed up Koudelka's intelligence here. Madfly decides to get off one more final attack, which is pretty damaging. It also does make the mistake of slowly moving closer to us. And that's not something you ever want to do whenever your most powerful caster is revving up for a very, very damaging spell. Yeah, that attack alone, I think, was over a third of the boss's health. And with that, we have successfully taken down one of the tougher fights earlier on in the game, and we have attained another very nice level. And since we are wielding the mace, and since our agility has gone down, it's worth pumping up Koudelka's agility just a little bit more. It was especially telling in that fight that having her agility up a little bit higher could have made things go a little bit more smoothly. Sadly, though, for that epic boss fight, we don't get anything major item-wise, just another mysterious piece of the icon's adornment here. Though I guess our real reward is the availability to use a save point. For now, though, just going to use that to heal up a little bit after that struggle, though I guess the level up also healed us up. It is nice, though, to see that now that the water has been purified by the elimination of the boss. It also causes a bit of a slight interior change to the... No, this place is still pretty horrifying, even if the water has changed. So we are greeted by another sea mollusk here. Though it was fairly easy to dispatch. Yeah, even though we did change the water from red to blue, it still definitely has acid down there. What's a bit more disconcerting is what happened to this door here. Seems that something tore its way through this massive metal door. Guess it could have been the armed bandits that were mentioned in the guard's diary, or the prisoners that were trying to break out once the armed bandits attacked. It's just... yeah, I get the feeling that it was something a bit larger than a crazed mob. I guess, though, that could just be, you know, flights of fancy giving birth to the general horrifying environment here. Though it's not that difficult to imagine any number of things, especially now that we are facing the Manbat. I think its in-game name is Crawler, but from the enemy description that I was able to find, it apparently is some strange experimentation to meld a human and a bat, and all it did was drive the end experiment crazed and bloodthirsty? I don't know. It's at least adorable to look at as it wiggles on the ground. It's just, in the end, we're not even going to give it a chance to suck our blood. Just going to keep on going down the aforementioned leveling stats that we mentioned before. It is a bit nice to get all of these lovely stat upgrades, though, even though I would appreciate a bit more in the way of equipment. And that isn't to say there aren't things strewn about the environment that you'd easily miss that could be nice upgrades. Just in this area, all you can find is a bit more pistol rounds. It does seem at this point that even as we are moving up James in the strength department, the pistol is seeming more and more underwhelming with the increase in enemies.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I can't believe these treasures are in this monastery. Is that Montaigne's signature? Oh, that's a Caravaggio. Unbelievable, truly. Why have these treasures been forgotten?
Treasures.
If these treasures can be contributed to the Vatican, their value to Christianity is unquantifiable. What a discovery!
Do you remember what this place is? It's not just a monastery, it was a prison. People were executed for fighting each other for supremacy. These treasures must have been taken from them, soaked with curses and hatred. You'll be cursed if you worship those things.
I am a busy man that does not have the patience to teach you the importance of faith. But I will tell you why we have found these treasures. It could only have come from the guidance of God. God sees all, He knows all. Got it?
Preach to the converted.
What about you, Edward? You seem a little more educated than she.
I don't really care. Talk to me about monetary value. Save the holy crap.
It seems I'm disappointed once again. I believe these dead thieves are better than you two, At least they appreciated true value.
Instead of preaching, I want you to understand something, okay? You can't label all those dead bodies as thieves hunting treasure. I saw plenty of dead women who were cut up and mixed in with the mummies, and they were pretty fresh.
Yeah. Strange. Even if I were used to seeing dead bodies, I'd be vomiting.
So it is that couple. But why?
Fools! How could such a kind and faithful couple be cold-blooded killers? This is the work of jealousy and greed. And pagans born of savagery, immigrants. I will not be a party to such abusive slander. This is so unpleasant.
So, as James continues to fail to reach common ground between himself and his other two party members, we've now gone straight from the dungeon right into the treasure trove of the condemned. In here we can find a few interesting items, such as these bowgun arrows, and as you might be able to assume, that also means that we can find a new weapon fairly soon. For that, though, we do have to deal with a brand new enemy and a returning enemy. We've seen the quizzical ghost before, but this very nimble hopping jester here is going to be something totally new. Now, while he does come across initially as very nimble, the jester here really does have a considerable amount of vitality. That means he takes a little bit of decreased damage from physical attacks, and he does have quite a bit of a health pool. Other than that, though, he will attack with his daggers, and, given the chance, he can give himself a buff to his agility, making him move even faster. Good thing is, though, that as far as I can tell, he is pretty weak to earth-based magic, so using Megalith against him will do a pretty sizable chunk of his health. The quizzical ghost, though, as you might recall, bit of a glass cannon, not very high in its health pool, and even in what I assume is it's supposed to be his upgraded state here, really doesn't do too much in comparison to what he did before. At most, he just seems to have a little bit more health, though he is still very susceptible to being shot in the face. Earth magic did its duty. Our quizzical ghost continues to make very bad life decisions as he attempts to do any damage against our highest piety character right now. I mean, he did manage to silence Koudelka, which might be dangerous if it wasn't for the fact that our two physical-based bruisers are still able to pelt him pretty easily. I suppose it is a bit of a shame that we aren't able to level up Koudelka's magic a bit more, but the good news is Edward was able to level up his mace, which allows him to now do a 2-hit combo. The bad thing about the weapon levels is that it's not 100% guarantee that the character will end up doing its combo attack. I don't know if that's based off luck or if it's based off another stat, maybe dexterity. It's just that, well, it's really appreciated whenever the character does do it, but it's a bit of a shame that they don't always do it. But yeah, if you have a very keen eye, you might have already seen the bowgun here. It's a bit of a mess of pixels, but it is a very, very good idea that you make sure to pick this weapon up. And it's not just for the fact that it does give you another ranged weapon. It's because, in reality, I think it's probably the second strongest gun that you can get in the entire game. It does have some massive drawbacks, though. If we take a look at it, you'll see that its ammo capacity is only 1. So you have to fire, waste a turn reloading, and then fire again. And the second problem is that the ammo for it, at least right now, is pretty limited. The primary reason for that, though, is if we go ahead and, let's say, equip it onto James here, you'll see that it quite frankly it goes over double the amount of strength that the current weapon he has on does. Also, it doesn't even decrease his agility or any other stats that much, so it's a pretty large boon. Still, that's all the items in here. And as this door is locked, we only have one other real way to go. And it is a very interesting change of environment here. We can see some very bizarre fresco where it mentions that there is a statue on the wall that we might be able to loosen if we had a bit of water pouring. So that's something to keep in mind for the future, though, well, there's no better place to get water than to, I guess, head upwards and have it stream down. Though we are greeted by another quick fight with a jester and a quizzical ghost. And it goes pretty much like the previous fight did. Strangely though, I don't know if these jesters just give a very large amount of XP, but yeah, we still seem to be leveling extremely fast. Which is good for us, because we will need all the health and strength and stats we can get. Especially now that Edward has finally broken 1,000 health. That's pretty nice. Not only that, but we do get another weapon, which will be nice to start leveling up our dagger ability for Edward. Yeah, this overall storage area is a really, really sudden change from the hellscape that we just left. It's a somewhat jarring, but it's at least visually different. We also find a nice high listel here in case we were ever lacking an MP, though we are leveling so much it's rarely ever needed. Also, for the keen-eyed viewer, you might have noticed this set of symbols over here, and while we don't know what these are used for just yet, it will be good to keep in mind those for the future because we will need them for a puzzle. Yeah, overall, this entire area is strewn for nice items for us to pick up. Some are required, some are not. This stone tablet, for example, is not really required, but it can be pretty helpful for in the future. So we have a run-in with the normal jailer here. And as I mentioned before, the only real difference between this one and the boss is just a slight bit of vitality. So, yet another pretty easy fight. With another very, very quick level. I'm still kind of hoping at this point that I am pumping up enough vitality into our caster characters to keep them alive. Though I might have to start pumping up their intelligence and mind just a little bit more to make sure they keep up doing the correct amount of damage. But yeah, the one really necessary item we want to get in this room is this little lion statue here. This will be for a puzzle much later on, but it's good to make sure you pick it up now just so you don't have to backtrack. In addition to that, we finally find this teddy bear. Though we don't keep the bear, instead we find a letter inside. And the good news is this isn't going to be reading material like the guard's diary. Instead, this is going to be pretty short and sweet, and what I believe to be a hint for a puzzle later on. You'll notice the inflected words. Probably good to keep those in mind. Yeah, also, in that previous fight with the jailer, our hammer did break, so we want to make sure and equip Edward with a brand new mace weapon. I think would be good, because that still keeps his vitality up. And the reason we want to make sure his vitality is as high as it can be, because we have already found ourselves right at another boss fight. And the centerpiece of this room is this very large water font, which is going to be our next save point, but as with all the other save points, before we can use it, we are going to have to take on its guardian. This time around, it is something almost near and dear to my heart. This enemy, this boss, is called a Dark Young. And for those familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, you might recognize exactly what this is. This is one of the 1,000 young of the Dark Goat Shub Niggurath, who I ended up taking my very unfortunate SA username from many, many years ago. But this boss is pretty much, I would say, as formidable as the Madfly was. It has pretty much the exact same health, and I think it is weak to both fire and wind, though it seems like its magic defense is so high that it doesn't really seem like it does that much of a difference in damage. Good thing is, though, that we did manage to level up the Fortify Strength ability for James there. That means that anytime we cast her from now on, instead of just adding 3 points, we'll actually end up adding 6 points. Which may not seem like a lot, but it's 6 stat points, so that is a pretty large exponential difference. Getting to the boss itself, though, outside of its very large health pool and massive amounts of defense, this is its primary means of attack, which does a noticeable amount of damage, but you might also notice can silence multiple people at once. I think, given the RNG of the game, you could get some instances where it will silence your entire party. And as you can imagine, that can be very, very dangerous, considering that when it ended up using that spell and hit Edward up there at the front, it took out about a little under half his health. And that's even, after we've been bumping up the vitality and making sure to give him a weapon that specifically gives him vitality. And that particular magic attack, well, that seems to be the boss's preferred means of attacking. Good thing is that it didn't manage to silence all of our party members, so James was able to heal up Edward. And we also have enough panacea to get rid of any kind of status ailments we have. I guess, you might not be as lucky as me to have just a sheer stockpile of them, so it might be a little bit difficult. But you can technically wait out the length of silence. I think it only lasts for 4 or 5 rounds. It's just, while you're doing that, you're just wasting time that you could be damaging the boss. There you see, I think, the one other primary attack that the Dark Young has, which will do a belly bump, which does a reasonable amount of damage. I mean, considering that Edward does have our highest physical defense, over 200 is a fair amount to do. Outside of that, though, it's merely a case of making sure that you keep Edward topped off, and if possible, have James buff up anybody that he can, and just try your best to work through the Dark Young's 3,500 health as quickly as you possibly can. Also, if it does strike you to maybe have James try to shoot it with the gun, I don't know. I wouldn't honestly recommend it. It doesn't do nearly enough damage. I guess you could equip him with the bowgun, but yet again, we just don't have the ammo for it yet. And it wasn't even necessary. Because after that successful fight, we have gained all the spoils we possibly can. I almost get the feeling that I might have been a bit under-leveled for this fight. Just because, well, you might notice the experience and the next option next to it. We are going to be getting multiple levels here. I think we end up getting 3 levels all total for each character, which is a bit extraordinary, and what makes me think that I might have gone into this a bit under-leveled, and what makes me think that at this point the game no longer expects you to just, just do normal exploration and moving about, that it might expect you to start grinding up a bit to get ready for some of the boss battles ahead. But it is very impressive to see Edward's health just keep shooting up and up, and his damage keeps shooting up, 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 and away. Still not sure what I want to do with James. He needs to do something more besides just support. Just not exactly sure if I should be bumping up his strength or not. Could just make him another ranged caster. And in addition to all those levels, we do get a unique weapon known as the Evil Horn. And we will be looking at that more next time. Just for right now, I think we have done quite a bit of adventuring, and I think we are due with a very nice rest and a very nice save. So hopefully you will join me next time as we continue making our way through the Storehouse of the Damned, and hopefully making our way back up to the monastery proper.